Welcome to Brew with Miss Baritone. I'm your host, Chicky Baritone, and this is my podcast. I'm gonna give it to you all black, no creamer, no sugar, no honey. So join me as I brew up some life-giving conversations with some dope people. Welcome to Brew with Miss Baritone. I'm very excited about my next guest, who is Miss Christina Hamilton. She is the visionary coach, amongst many other things. But welcome to the podcast.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. I am so honored to be here.
I am so happy that you're here.
I'm so excited about what we're going to get into today.
Absolutely. So Christina, you don't know the backstory to this, but I found out about you because Kenya Trout, who is a good friend of mine.
Yes.
It was a post that you put on Facebook and she tagged me on the post and I could not follow you, friend request you fast enough. And since then, I have been so blessed from afar.
Wow.
And everything that you have posted, I mean, you've been extremely transparent about your testimony, which is a blessing. And in this day and time, social media, which is a well-scripted,
well curated.
Exactly. Of what you want people to believe. Yeah. It's very hard to see the real between these trees of deception.
Yes.
And you just come across your voice on social media is such a voice and for such a time as this. Yeah. I appreciate how you use the platform. And there is so much to you that I'm excited about talking about. And one of those things, you have a business called Preach Girl.
Yes.
And from Preach Girl, you have also a consulting business. So tell us a little bit about what you do and who you are.
Well, first of all, let me wipe my tears, right? Just from the beautiful things that you've shared. So from just how I got here, in 2018, I had just come out of a relationship. I had ended an engagement. I knew that it was time to walk away. And I took inventory of my life and I just felt like, okay, my assignment here and the assignments of the things here for me are also, it's done, right?
Yeah, yep.
And I had 6 weeks left in my lease and the Lord began to lead me to move to Atlanta.
Wow.
And I just had to step out on faith, left my job, left my career, said I'm going to start consulting.
Wow.
And I came down truly on faith. Now, the old Christina would have never left one job without having something lined up. So I came here for a year and a half. I did not have not one direct deposit.
Wow.
So as you can imagine, blew through my savings, took some money out of 401k, and I had literally nothing but God.
Wow.
And I had a community of believers that were just so supportive of me and generous toward me. But the Lord, I remember crying one day and I said, God, I don't have anything. I can't give. My tithes in any given week might be $10. So for the tithers out there, you know what that means.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I felt so helpless. And I heard the Lord say, let me take care of you. And in a year and a half's time, God, not only did he restore me to a place of financial stability, but he used those experiences to birth in me an expansion of the Preach Girl ministry, right? And then also he said, now it's time for you to shift your consulting model into a coaching model.
Wow.
And he literally sitting on my couch gave me the vision, gave me the brand colors, and gave me the direction for the movement that would become the visionary coach.
Wow. So you started, the business really kind of was in motion in Charlotte?
It was in motion. Actually, it was in motion. So I'm originally from Boston.
Okay.
Moved back there when I was in my early 20s for work. And it was there right before I moved to Atlanta, I launched what was the ACES Group. And that was my consulting firm for project management, all that good stuff. And then God gave me the vision for Preach Girl.
Okay.
And I said, it was started as a conference. And so I said, okay, well, there's a lot of conferences out there. Does the world really need another conference? And God was like, yes.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, God, if you give me the name, I'll do it. Wow. And he gave me Preach Girl. And it was to empower and engage and just unify and educate women that are in business, ministry, and entrepreneurship. Because I felt like there was a perspective there
Yeah.
and a voice there that wasn't being heard.
Yeah.
And so that's how all that started. But it wasn't until the move to Atlanta that everything really began to flourish and to really take root.
Wow.
Yeah.
So being in Atlanta and doing this this conference under the business Preach Girl, what do you think, and I'm putting you on the spot,
yeah, of course.
what do you think is the issue that we have with women as it relates to collaboration, ministry,
Yeah.
and business?
Yeah. So I love this question. I was just recently on a live where there was a question about, what is the root of some of the challenges if you try to go to a woman and encourage her or maybe even edify her in a certain area, and there might be some resistance, like, you're not my mama, or, I'm older than you, can you? And so what I said to that was, some people are just obstinate and they don't like to be unified and they don't like to collaborate, and you have to allow God to really handle that person. But others, there's a deeper rooted, I'm afraid of being forgotten. I'm afraid of being overlooked.
Wow.
Right? Maybe I'm past a certain age and I'm not where I thought I'd be. I'm in my 30s. I'm in my 40s.
That's good.
And so there's this reaction, right, to how can I not be overlooked? How do I make sure that my babies don't get taken, right? But it's all rooted in fear.
Yeah.
It's all rooted in fear. It's all rooted in insecurity.
Yeah.
And when we say, when we have the grace toward people to say, maybe there's a reason why this sister is resistant to collaboration. Let me try to build a genuine relationship with her and affirm her in who she is and celebrate what she does. Maybe she'll see me as a safe space, and maybe that'll leave room for God to do something between the both of us.
Yes. And and I am learning that I feel like sometimes you kind of deal with the audience that's closely related to you. So as a woman in her mid-40s, you kind of only think the women in the mid-40s are going to benefit from what you have that God has given you.
Yes.
But it truly, like I was saying to one of my guests, and she put it so eloquently, she's kind of taken age off the table and kind of now cater to the symptoms.
I love
the
that.
issues.
I love that.
So I never thought about it like that. That and I hate that question sometimes. I hate to use the word hate, but when God is giving you an assignment, and they want you to say, okay, so who's your target audience? And I know it's necessary for business,
right?
But my thought is, I want everybody to benefit from this. So have you experienced in Preach Girl that the message has been for not just a particular group of women? Have you seen several age ranges in your ministry? And if you haven't, what do you think is the reason why we're not reaching these girls in different ages outside of our own?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do think that there is a space that your voice can be called to, right? I do think that there's a space where God can anoint you and strategy and give you strategy for a specific space. But he's still God, which means that he can take whatever he's assigned you to do and reshape it for any voice, any segment, any gender, and he's going to minister however he wants to, right? And we have to see, as believers, we have to see our platforms as ministries as well. With Preach Girl, I was completely surprised because when I launched Preach Girl, I was late 20s. So that's where my head was at, women in their 20s, maybe early 30s. When I tell you women 40s, 50s, 60s were at our first conference, I could not believe it. And so your question, I love it because it makes me think about something. I forget where I learned it, but they talked about many of us being stuck at the age of our trauma. Right? So this is why we can't be so set on, I minister to 20-year-olds, because there could be a 50-year-old woman who got stunted at 25. And her psychological, social, relational development stopped at 25. But she's 50. And so now she's bearing 50-year-old expectations with 25-year-old equipping. Right? So this is why I totally agree with you that while we have to know strategically who our voice is assigned to, right? And there's business strategies, principles behind all that. We have to be following the leading of the Spirit.
That's right.
Because there's something on the inside of each of us. There's no trouble, there's no trauma, there's no problem, there's no issue that you can have that God allows you to experience in life that has not already come prepackaged with the grace to survive it. But that grace could be in the form of a preach girl, in the form of your podcast, right? So we, not only do we have to be open to different audiences than what we envisioned, those audiences also have to be open to receive us.
Oh, that's good. That's so good. And even with the same way that we approach business, ministry, talk to me a little bit about business. So you have a project management background, in addition to your ministry outside of work, and woman to woman, I've had my challenges. I'm a Black woman with an engineering background.
Wow.
And been one of very few women who are in engineering and Black. And I have 20 plus years and counting of experiences and issues that have pushed me to actually write a book about it. And the book is not about just my experience, but it's giving other women that have gone through issues in corporate America a platform to, number one, tell their story, but also to protect their identity. These are stories that they have not felt comfortable telling HR. That God has really shown me favor to allow these women to share their stories in my book. So watching you from afar, admiring your journey,
thank you.
What has been your way to reach women of color in business?
So that for me, I have always been so proud of my Blackness. And I've been so proud of the fact that God chose to send me into the world in this package. I have been so proud of it, have not shied away from it. And, even in sometimes in a world where people can be racially ambiguous, it's like, no, you're going to understand who I am and where I come from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's my first passion, was when I said, okay, God, if you've opened doors for me in corporate America, which is largely dominated by those that are not culturally like us, show me how to navigate this space without losing who I am. Right?
It's huge.
And I often would go into environments and I would immediately seek out other women of color if I met them in a meeting, and I would just say, hey, let's have coffee. And the initial hesitation is, well, I don't want to be the person that's all Black people at the lunch table. And I said, no, we're going to, if that's what it takes, we're going to be that. And we're going to make sure that we don't feel uncomfortable being who we naturally, organically are, because we're not excluding anybody. Anybody can come and sit down at our table, but we have to be intentional about giving each other a voice. So what I would do, especially early in my career, was if I stumbled across an intern or another woman of color, hey, let's go grab some coffee, let's have lunch sometime, and build relationship. And over time, we would share our experiences, and then we would start the exchange of, okay, sis, how do I navigate this space? And was this an area that I could do better in, or was this truly an area that my race or my gender played an issue in how I was received or not? So I think it's just about being intentional. It's not about being belligerent, because you won't be well received.
That's right.
But it's about being strategic and not feeling like you have to shy away from the package that you came into the world in.
Exactly. I love the way you put that. It's just still so many young ladies that are suffering in silence, and I really try to be very creative in the workspace and reaching these young ladies. What has been, have you had experienced any challenges as it relates to your consulting business?
Yes. So when you're starting so for those who may not know, consulting is a do it for you. Coaching is a do it with you or teach you how to do it model, right? Because a lot of people say, well, what's the difference between a coach and a consult? I provide both services, but primarily the coaching now. When I was starting as a consultant, I took my skill sets in project management and said, you know what? I grew up in the church. You know, how many of us have been on an event or a conference or something that was like, we needed a project manager. And so God opened up a door for me with pastors and preachers and faith-based conferences. And it was a niche that was just really, really powerful, right? The challenge for me was, unfortunately, in our communities, the financing is not always there.
Yeah.
And so my focus as a new consultant was, let me build the relationships. Let me, cut my teeth and really learn how to be a good consultant and a good partner. So that was one challenge. But also, I think it was not having the resources as an African-American woman starting a consulting business to say, how do I really make this work and break into those spaces where there's not a lot of people who look like me?
Yeah.
Because I would be giving, I would meet with executives, vice presidents, and, walking them through proposals. And you could just kind of sense, we're not quite taking her seriously. And it's because of age or gender. And I think in those moments, we have to take what we can from those experiences, but understand that, okay, whatever I missed, I'm going to bake that into my next, and I'm going to keep on building.
Yeah.
You have to keep digging.
Yeah.
You have to keep digging. I think about, I say this all the time, Isaac's wells that his enemy kept trying to take. He had to keep digging to get to Rehoboth. And I think we have to understand when God is saying to stop a thing and when he's telling you to keep digging.
Yes.
Because a lot of times what we think God doesn't want us to have or experience because it keeps getting taken from us, he actually wants us to have that exact thing in great abundance.
Wow.
So we have to keep going.
Oh, that's good. That's so good. So when I think about project management, and you'll be able to relate to this, there are different challenges in different regions when you're doing projects, right? So you are originally from Boston.
Yes.
Do you feel like the challenges that you may have experienced up north are different than the challenges you have down south?
As a project manager, absolutely.
Project manager, but from both components,
Sure.
from your professional and from ministry, from both sides.
So I would say I'll start with the professional.
Yeah.
There's a really big difference in not so much corporate culture, because a company really, they try to dictate and manage what that culture is. And so, but regionally, from a professional standpoint, I found that there was more of an expectation up north for like this really rigid, direct, great people, but there was a culture of we understand what you do, and we expect you to do it, and we expect you to do it well. In the South, when I came here, I would say more so because it was the not-for-profit sector, the faith-based sector, where they really didn't understand what project management was.
Sure.
I think a lot of folks thought it was a glorified. And we love our executive admins because they're geniuses and leaders in their own right.
Really
so
are.
I'm not diminishing that in any way.
They really are.
It's a critical role, but it's a different role from a project manager, right? And so I think a lot of folks would say, "Oh, she does project management," and they like, "Okay, come plan my event or come help me, do these different tasks." Yeah. There's a different dynamic to what a project manager brings. And so what I had to learn after getting my bumps and bruises was, let me spend some time educating and then asking, is this what you want?
Yes.
Because I flat out asked someone, I said, you said you wanted a project manager. This is everything that means. I'm going to be flexible. I'm going to be your partner, right? You're the client, right? I'm not running the show. But do you really want it? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Do you really want this medicine?
Right. Because, people, and it can really, the learning tool behind that I have also learned is like, don't ever make assumptions. No. Because the terminology and the knowledge and wisdom behind learning what certain things mean can cost you if you're not clear. And you can't take a term like, I'm working with a client now and they say task and I say WBS. Right. Work breakdown structure versus task. And I'm like, so the first question he asked me was, I said, so what's this task? I was asking about task. He was like, so first of all, what is a task? I said, same thing as WBS. Yes. Oh. Yes. So it's a connection. It's a different version of language, but they all mean the same thing. And it's so important to do that in ministry and in business.
And in business. And I'm learning. It's not that, because I remember one time I was presenting on how project management can be leveraged in the church space.
Oh, that's
and
good.
Of course, I was using the word project a lot, right? in the context of events, conferences, whatever we're trying to do. The church is trying to maybe build a new function or a new auxiliary, whatever it is. And one of the women, everyone by and large was receptive to what I was saying, but there was one woman that said, "I'm sorry, but you keep calling it a project. Ministry is not a project." And I thought, all right. And I chose in that because it wasn't my live and it wasn't my platform. So I said, this is not my space to address that. I said, but you couldn't have been here for the whole live, right? Because we set the context of, we know it's ministry, we know it's kingdom, we know we have to be spirit led, and at the end of the day, God is our ultimate stakeholder in this project.
Very good.
But you can still apply principles that work in a faith-based environment. So even when it comes to ministry, even my own time, my own understanding, I can't necessarily cut off who I am as a project manager because it happens to be ministry, right? And so I had to learn to be okay with the pushback that I would get, and even expect it to say, well, we don't want to do it that way. I'll be flexible. I'm going to make sure that we enjoy the way we work together. But in ministry, you have to do the same thing. Ministry leader, what is your expectation of me in this role, right? And here's the key. If that person's expectation of you in a service capacity or ministry capacity does not align with what God has called you to do and to be, and it's not facilitating an edification, you have to know when to set boundaries.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, and it's okay as well. I think sometimes people feel pressured to have to still try to customize it, especially if it's not something that this person has been graced or gifted to do. It's not a part of their gift as to what they're offering. It really is okay to say, no, this is not. Stop trying to make something be something that it's not.
That's right.
And it's really okay.
It is.
And the thing is, it's like we're all here trying to make sure you get what you're asking for and what you're, in some cases, paying for. And, there's still a lot at stake. There's a bigger vision behind this. And it's okay to be very frank about the fact that this is not a good fit. But, thank you, and let me keep it moving.
Bowing out is the most humble act that you could do.
Yes.
Bowing out, if you keep, and so here's also where humility comes in. Okay, Lord, what might I be doing wrong?
Yeah.
Where might I be trying to maybe have too much structure, and teach me how to be flexible in that, right? Yeah. But at the same time, what I've learned, because this is an area that I've been challenged in, is understanding and being confident, not because we've learned how to be confident in our presentation.
Yeah.
We've got to be confident in our being.
That's good.
So when I go home,
that's so good.
The value that I believe that I offered them in the confidence of my presentation, I've got to now go and battle thoughts of anxiety of, but am I an imposter? Did I really do well enough? Am I gonna buckle at the first pushback? No, I'm gonna know who I am. Yeah. Be open to be teachable. Be open to be edified and to be corrected. But at the same time, say, God shaped me, gifted me, purposed me in this for his glory and for your benefit. So I've got to be confident in my being just as much as I am confident in my presentation of what God has given me to say or do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what do you think the challenge is? I deal with millennials all the time.
Okay.
And so the question I would have for you in reference to that is, what is some of the advice you would give to some of our young professionals? They come into organizations and ministry and they have these grand ideas. You already knew what I was going to say. He was like, they're about to be on 10.
Right.
Like, grand ideas. Yes. And then it's like, there's a process.
Yeah.
There is a way to go about it. It's not that your idea won't work, but there's a process that you might not be familiar with. But it's truly a challenge trying to make them understand the balance of that statement. Yeah. Because while we do want you to dream big and to have these grand ideas that can shape and change this ministry or shape and change this business, there is a process. We want you to understand how it works before you start coming in and changing it.
So I think that's critically important in any context where you are new.
Yes.
Unless someone has come in and given you a very public edict that you're running the show and it's up to you ultimately the decisions, that's a different situation, right? But if you're new, it's important to honor what happened before you, right? By understanding and learning of it and saying, okay, let me get context before I present a lot of different ideas. But also, here's the thing, understand the spirit that you're presenting something in. Is it that I'm trying to show off or show what I know, or is it that I really believe in my heart that this is going to benefit? Here's the balance. Iron sharpens iron, right? So that generational conflict is necessary to make us better, right? So when I think about respect the process, understand the process, but then there's also got to be an openness that if there needs to be a shaking up of that process, we've got to be open to that on both sides as well. But I think if there's a mutual respect for what happened before me and acknowledge that, then that shows forth wisdom that I'm going to be more successful in my approach if I understand what happened before me, before I got here, and then say, okay, well, have we thought about this? What we have to be open to is, okay, what's the right degree of shifting and change that we can absorb? Because just coming in and ripping something up, you might cause more damage, right, in the process. Right. But then, okay, God, does this need to be uprooted, right? But am I thank you, Lord. Not to get too churchy here.
It's all good.
Sometimes you can have God can give you the right idea and the right assignment, but it's not for you to carry out. Sometimes who the messaging is coming from, right? Sometimes and you have to be humble enough to say, maybe God did give me this idea. Right. And I'm not talking about just giving away your gems and letting other people take credit for it. Right. But sometimes, okay, God, who can carry this message ahead of me? Right? That's good. Who can carry this? Even Jesus had somebody carrying a message ahead of him before he came on the scene, right? So if God in flesh had to do that wait for his person to precede him, to introduce him and make way for him, the millennials, we've got to give grace to the same, right? Like, how do I partner with those that are before me, more, we're not going to say older, but more seasoned, more marinated? Maybe they can teach me how to get this message out, or they can go before me because they've got battle scars that I don't have yet. Right? So that's where we as millennials have to say, okay, let me learn. Right? And let me let this person know I've got their back, and then they'll help open the way for me to share whatever it is that I need to share.
That's good.
God is good.
God is so good. I just wish I had more time. But my God, what a blessing.
Thank you.
You have been, and what a voice in the wilderness.
Oh, goodness.
What a woman of valor you are. And everything I felt about you is that and then some. So thank you so much for being such a blessing to my podcast. How can people reach you from a social media standpoint? Absolutely. And to tell a little bit about the consulting business, like what that entails and how we can reach out. Someone wants to follow you or find out more about your consulting business.
I can't thank you enough for this platform and for opening up your doors. I'm so grateful, and your spirit is so sweet. So I just have to say that publicly. So on Instagram, Facebook, at Christina Raye Hamilton, Raye with an E, Raye. And then my website is visionarycoach.preachgirl.com. is where they can find me, book a complimentary initial consultation. Awesome. And the biggest thing about the business is I help entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders build, brand, and expand their businesses in 90 days or less, right?
Nice.
Through a proven framework. And you don't need any money to get started. Just have a conversation with me. Let's get your mindset going in a place of faith, and let's see what we can do.
Woo, that's good. Good job. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
y'all
you.
Clap it up for Miss Christina.
Thank y'all.